ladies and gentlemen. You ever notice how we celebrate success like it's some kind of divine accident, like a lightning strike that just happened to land on the lucky few? But what if I told you that's a lie we've been fed to stay comfortable? Imagine waking up 10 years from now, staring into a mirror, and realizing you traded your potential for convenience. How's that for a morning coffee? The truth is, success isn't magic, it's math. It's biology. It's cause and effect. And if you don't learn the laws that govern it, you'll be governed by regret. In the next few minutes, I'm going to unravel the 4 invisible laws that silently decide whether you rise or rot, and by the time we hit the last one, well, let's just say you'll never be able to look at your own excuses the same way again. But before we get there, ask yourself this. If the life you're living isn't the one you dreamed of, whose formula are you following? Clarity is the foundation of all meaningful action. Without it, even the most determined efforts collapse under confusion. Imagine standing in a thick fog on a mountain trail. You're equipped with strength, motivation, and the will to climb, but you can't see where to step. Every move feels like a guess, and every guess brings hesitation. That's exactly how most people live. They're ambitious but aimless, energized but misdirected. They work hard but don't know exactly what they're working toward, and so their energy gets scattered like light through a prism instead of being focused like a laser. Clarity in its purest form is the power to choose with precision. It's knowing exactly what you want, why you want it, and how it aligns with who you are becoming. Most people say they want success, but when asked to define it, they speak in circles: more money, more time, more freedom. But these are not goals, they are vague desires. The mind can't build a path to a moving target. Clarity is when those desires take shape, become measurable, specific, time-bound. It's the difference between saying, I want to be fit, and saying, I will lose 15 pounds in the next 90 days by training 5 times a week and following a structured diet. The second version has power. It instructs your behavior. It filters your decisions. It creates momentum. When you're clear, your brain stops asking, what should I do next, and starts asking, how fast can I do it? Clarity also transforms pain into progress. Life throws problems at everyone: failure, rejection, fatigue, loss. But when you're clear about your purpose, those problems stop being signals to quit and start becoming signals to grow. You don't take setbacks personally because you understand they're just part of the process. A person without clarity feels every difficulty as a crisis. A person with clarity feels every difficulty as feedback. That's how they keep moving when others freeze. Their eyes are fixed on a future that matters, and that vision acts like gravity. It pulls them forward. Think of a skilled archer. They don't draw the bow and shoot randomly hoping something hits. They fix their eyes on a target so precisely that the muscles of the body align to serve that focus. The breath, the hands, the posture, all of it becomes a single system aiming in one direction. That's the internal state clarity produces. Your emotions, your choices, your habits, they begin to serve one aim. Distractions lose their power. Opportunities become obvious. Even your conversations shift. You stop entertaining small talk and you start engaging in ideas that elevate your mission. You stop saying yes to every invitation because you know what's worth your time. People might call it obsession, but it's actually alignment. Clarity is not something you wait for. It's something you create, and the process is uncomfortable. It demands brutal honesty. You must confront your own contradictions, your own laziness, your own fear of failure. You have to get specific about what you want, even when it feels safer to keep things flexible. Why? Because vagueness is a shield we use to avoid commitment. When you're vague, you can't fail because you never defined what success meant. But when you get clear, you make failure real. And that's exactly why clarity is rare. It takes courage to define what you want. It takes discipline to pursue it when the path gets difficult. It takes self-respect to demand a life that reflects your true values instead of just surviving whatever comes your way. People often say, I'll get clear once I have more time. But time doesn't give clarity, clarity gives time. When you're clear, you stop wasting hours on things that don't matter. You stop saying yes to every shiny distraction. You stop pretending that being busy is the same as being effective. Clarity forces you to simplify, and in that simplification, you become powerful. You're no longer torn in 100 directions. You're no longer driven by comparison because your metric for success comes from within. You're no longer paralyzed by overthinking because the path has already been chosen. All that's left is execution. Habits are not just routines, they are the silent architects of your future. Beneath every great achievement lies a system of small, repetitive actions that compound over time. Most people chase outcomes without questioning the patterns that produce them. They want wealth without changing how they spend. They want health without adjusting how they eat. They want confidence without altering how they think. But life doesn't reward intentions, it rewards behaviors. And those behaviors are shaped, strengthened, and solidified by habit. Your results are never random, they're a mirror of what you do repeatedly. This is the hidden algorithm of success. What you practice in private, you perform in public. Whether it's excellence or mediocrity, it never arrives by accident. If you zoom into the life of anyone successful, not just celebrities or billionaires, but disciplined, fulfilled individuals, you'll find a web of habits that support their consistency. Morning rituals that align their mind. Eating patterns that fuel their energy. Mental routines that protect their focus. None of this is glamorous. It's not dramatic. That's what makes it so easy to overlook. Habits work in silence. You don't notice them shaping your destiny until the results are undeniable. It's like water carving a canyon, not in a single flood, but through steady, persistent flow. And by the time you feel the impact of a habit, it's already carved a groove into your identity. The most dangerous thing about habits is how invisible they can be. You might think you're making choices every day, but the truth is most of your day runs on autopilot. Studies show that more than 40% of our daily actions are habits, not conscious decisions. That means you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. You might have dreams of changing your life, but if your default behaviors don't change, those dreams stay dreams. Success isn't about doing everything right. Once it's about doing the right thing consistently enough that it becomes automatic. Because when habits take over, willpower isn't required. Momentum is. Here's the harsh truth most people avoid. Your habits are either serving your growth or sabotaging it. There's no neutral zone. Every late night scrolling session, every skipped workout, every promise you break to yourself, it adds up. Just like every early wake up, every chapter you read, every minute you reflect. Habits don't care what you believe. They only care what you do. And what you do daily becomes who you are. That's why transformation isn't about doing more, it's about doing better. Replacing chaos with structure. Replacing distraction with intention. Replacing effort with systems. Because when you create the right habits, success becomes less about trying and more about living. Most people think they need motivation to build habits, but the opposite is true. Habits build motivation. When you see small wins stack up, when you feel stronger, think clearer, or produce better, you want to keep going. That's the loop. Action creates evidence. Evidence builds belief. Belief fuels action. And suddenly, something that felt hard becomes your new standard. The gym isn't a chore, it's a reset. Reading isn't a task, it's a habit of sharpening your mind. Planning your day isn't overkill, it's the system that protects your time. And the longer you stick with it, the less friction you feel. Because habits aren't just tools, they're identity signals. Every time you stick to a habit, you cast a vote for the kind of person you want to become. But there's a catch: bad habits work the same way. Miss one deadline and nothing breaks. Miss 10 and you stop trusting yourself. Lie once and it feels clever. Lie often and it becomes who you are. Habits shape not only your outcomes but your character. That's why changing them is hard. It's not just a behavior shift, it's an identity shift. You're not just quitting sugar, you're becoming someone who values health. You're not just waking up early, you're becoming someone who respects time. You're not just turning off distractions, you're becoming someone who guards focus. And that internal shift is where real growth begins. The truth is, your future is already being written by your habits. Whether you notice it or not, every day you repeat a behavior, you reinforce a pathway. Those pathways become patterns. Those patterns become your lifestyle. And that lifestyle becomes your legacy. You don't need to control the future, you just need to control what you do next. Because the small thing you choose today might be the beginning of everything you want tomorrow. People love to glorify willpower like it's some heroic force that can overcome anything. They talk about grinding harder, staying disciplined, pushing through pain, and while those things sound inspiring, they're rarely sustainable. The truth is, willpower is like a battery. It drains throughout the day. You can use it to make a few hard decisions, but eventually it runs low, and when it does, your environment takes over. Your surroundings begin to shape your behavior more than your intentions. That's why someone can be deeply committed to change and still fall back into old patterns. It's not that they're weak, it's that they're fighting against the tide instead of redirecting the current. The most powerful people don't have more willpower, they design better environments. Think about it, if you're trying to eat healthy, but your kitchen is filled with junk food, every moment becomes a battle. Every craving, every glance at the snack shelf becomes a test of strength. But if that same kitchen only has nutritious options, the battle disappears. The same applies to your digital space. If your phone is filled with social media apps and notifications, your attention gets hijacked every 5 minutes. But if your environment is designed for focus, if distractions are buried and your tools are organized, deep work becomes natural. You don't rise above your environment, you adapt to it. So if you want lasting change, you don't just change yourself, you change where and how you live, work, think, and engage. People underestimate how subtly their environment influences them. The temperature of a room affects your productivity. The posture of the people around you influences your mood. The books on your shelf signal what kind of knowledge you value. Even the lighting in your workspace can affect how alert or sleepy you feel. These things don't seem important on their own, but over time they form an ecosystem that either elevates or erodes your potential. Most people try to fix their mindset without ever touching the space that's feeding their mindset. They think a new morning routine will change their life, while their bedroom is a mess, their workspace is cluttered, and they're surrounded by people who drain their energy. No amount of motivation survives that kind of chaos. One of the most overlooked parts of environment is the people in it. You can have the best goals, the best habits, and the strongest intentions, but if you're constantly surrounded by individuals who don't believe in growth, who normalize complaining, who mock ambition, your fire dims. Not because you're not strong, but because you're human. Energy is contagious. Belief is contagious. If everyone around you treats mediocrity as the ceiling, you'll start mistaking it for the sky. But the opposite is also true. Place yourself among builders, thinkers, creators, people who challenge you to level up, and your standards will rise automatically. You won't need constant motivation because you'll be immersed in a culture where growth is the default. Changing your environment isn't always about massive life shifts. It's not always about moving cities or quitting your job overnight. Sometimes it's as simple as rearranging your space so that the tools for progress are visible and the triggers for distraction are hidden. Sometimes it's about setting boundaries with the people who pull you off course, or spending 5 minutes planning your day instead of diving straight into noise. It's about creating friction for the behaviors you want to stop and removing friction for the ones you want to build. If it's hard to do the wrong thing and easy to do the right thing, change happens almost on autopilot. This is the secret high performers understand. They don't rely on willpower to win the day. They remove the choices that require it. They build systems that carry them through slumps. They engineer environments that make excellence easier. It's not about being stronger than everyone else, it's about being smarter than your excuses. The person who walks into a gym every morning doesn't need motivation to work out. The gym itself is a trigger. The environment does half the work. The same goes for writers who set up their desk a certain way, or entrepreneurs who schedule strategy hours during their peak energy time. They've aligned their space and time with their goals. And when everything points in one direction, progress is no longer about force, it becomes flow. The mistake people make is blaming themselves for every failure, every misstep, every relapse, without ever examining the surroundings that are constantly shaping their behavior. But if your environment makes the wrong thing easy and the right thing hard, no amount of grit will save you. Success is not just about inner strength, it's about outer structure. Your environment is always whispering to your habits, either encouraging discipline or sabotaging it in silence. And once you become aware of that voice, you no longer leave your growth to chance. You start to architect it moment by moment, space by space, until your life supports your purpose by design rather than default. Feedback is the raw material of growth. Without it, improvement is blind. People often say practice makes perfect, but that's only half the truth. Informed practice makes perfect. Repetition without reflection is just motion without progress. If you're doing something wrong and no one tells you, or worse, you never notice, all your effort does is reinforce failure. Feedback is what turns effort into evolution. It reveals the gap between what you think you're doing and what you're actually doing. And in that gap lies your potential. The most successful people aren't the ones who never make mistakes, they're the ones who learn the fastest. And the speed of that learning is driven by the quality and frequency of feedback. Most people avoid feedback because it threatens the ego. It forces you to confront flaws, expose blind spots, and admit that your current best isn't good enough yet. That kind of truth is uncomfortable. But mastery doesn't come from comfort. It comes from confrontation with your limits, your assumptions, and your performance. If you're not seeking feedback, you're choosing stagnation. You might feel safe, but you're not growing. And in a world that's constantly evolving, staying still is the same as falling behind. The difference between amateurs and professionals is not talent, it's how they handle feedback. Amateurs take it personally. Professionals treat it like data. There's a dangerous illusion that success is a straight line, a constant rise. But in reality, progress is jagged. You try, you fail, you adjust. Feedback is the mechanism that sharpens every adjustment. Whether it's a coach reviewing your technique, an audience reacting to your message, or your own reflection on a poor decision, each one provides information. That information is gold, but only if you listen. Most people don't. They defend their methods. They justify their outcomes. They reject anything that doesn't affirm their effort. And in doing so, they lock themselves in a prison of their current level. Growth only begins when you drop the need to be right and pick up the desire to improve. Feedback doesn't always come with a bow on it. Sometimes it's brutal. Sometimes it's unexpected. Sometimes it stings. But pain can be a powerful teacher if you don't waste it. A failed project, a lost opportunity, a harsh critique, these aren't just setbacks, they're signals. They tell you what didn't work, what needs refining, what demands more from you. If you're willing to listen without defensiveness, those signals guide your evolution. They stop being threats and start becoming tools. Feedback is not about judgment, it's about alignment. It helps you course correct before the gap between intention and impact becomes a chasm. The people who rise the fastest are the ones who build feedback loops into everything they do. They don't wait for criticism to come to them, they seek it out. They ask hard questions: what could I have done better? Where did I miss the mark? What am I not seeing? And they don't just ask the questions, they implement the answers. This is how they compress learning time. They don't need to repeat the same mistake 10 times because they understand it the first time. They turn reflection into an advantage. They use feedback not as a scorecard, but as a roadmap. Every critique becomes a compass pointing them toward mastery. But not all feedback is created equal. Part of growing smarter is learning which voices to trust. Random opinions are not feedback, they're noise. Feedback must be rooted in context, experience, and intent. It should come from people who understand your vision, care about your development, and know what excellence looks like. Otherwise, you risk chasing validation instead of improvement. The goal is not to please everyone, it's to evolve in the direction of your purpose. That's why self-feedback matters too. Reviewing your own results, analyzing your own behavior, being brutally honest in the mirror, that's where personal mastery begins. Because if you're not willing to coach yourself, even the best external advice won't stick. There's a hidden power in becoming feedback friendly. It makes you resilient. When you stop fearing critique, you stop fearing exposure. You start performing with openness instead of defensiveness. You experiment more. You iterate faster. You detach your identity from your performance, which makes you unstoppable. Because when your worth isn't tied to getting everything right the first time, failure loses its grip on you. You stop seeing mistakes as evidence that you're not good enough and start seeing them as ingredients of getting better. Feedback becomes fuel, not fire. It pushes you forward instead of burning you out. And when feedback becomes a habit, so does mastery.